Welcome back. It's 7:45. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Anne Diamond and myself, Martin Daubney.
Is the weather different from how it was when you were a child?
Yes.
Or are you just looking back through rose-tinted glasses? Rona says, I'm 60 and I clearly remember hot weather during the October week school holidays, around 46 or 47 years ago.
Yeah, Howard is short and to the point. I'm Welsh and I'm 75 and I don't remember that many white Christmases. Maybe you had a few sherries in the morning.
Tony says, unfortunately, Anne, everything in this country, including the weather, was better years ago.
I do tend to agree with that.
Yes, I know, I sort of do, but I think that's just a sign of age.
Yes, it is.
OK, let's bring you up to date then with what's going on in the world. After its victory in the Rutherglen by-election, the Eye reports of Labour's plan to solve the UK housing crisis by building new towns and taxing developers.
And that new homes plan by Labour, it's going to be unveiled at the conference in Liverpool this weekend, is also on the front of The Guardian.
Labour policies also make the top story in The Times, with the Shadow Health Secretary saying that the NHS must modernise or die.
It's that shorthand for they're going to partly privatise it. Moving on. Menopause madness. That's the headline on the front of the Mail, reporting that dozens of public bodies and universities have what it calls male menopause policies.
And then the death of the wife of former Manchester United football manager Sir Alex Ferguson is the lead story in The Star, and our commiserations to him hugely, I think.
Always called her his rock. Well, joining us to go through some of the day's headlines, back with us again is GBNEWS senior political commentator Nigel Nelson and former Conservative advisor Claire Purcell. Hello to you again, guys. Let's start with that menopause thing. I know we covered that in the last one because we had confirmation, didn't we? That it's a real thing. A therapist, here it is, Jan wrote in saying it is a real thing. It's called the andropause. So, Nigel, you were right. Let's move on to...
Oh, good, I'm so glad you said that. I don't think we can take any more of that at the moment, but it is there as a thing on the NHS website.
Yes.
However, Nigel, you've been looking to the front page lead of the Telegraph, where police have wrongly labelled hundreds of suspected rapists as women.
Yes. And this is from a Freedom of Information request. What the Telegraph discovered, that over the last 4 years, 260 men who identify as women have been sent to the Crown Prosecution Service for alleged rape. Another 200 plus are non-binary, so they're just registered as unknown. And the tricky bit here is that you can only be convicted, you can only be a rapist in the law if you're a biological male.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because rape is
a man-on-woman thing.
It's the insertion. It's the act
well, it can be a man-on-man thing, but it's actually, yes.
Yeah.
But Martin's absolutely right. You have to be a biological man to be a rapist.
Yes.
So if these people are trying to get out of the charges by pretending to be women, that's obviously wrong.
Who's advising them to do this? Because there are so many. This isn't just coincidence, is it?
No, it was guidelines the police had. The Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, says that they ought to stop, but they haven't stopped yet.
So are police at some stage saying to alleged rapists, we're probably going to charge you with rape, but you need to know that you have the right to actually plead that you're not a man?
Well, they have to register the gender of the person.
Yeah.
So the answer I would have thought to get round this is that whatever your gender is on an official document, so whether it be a driving licence, a passport, or whatever, the police should use that gender. Otherwise, it would get so complicated.
Yeah. And this brings, Claire, into sharp focus the conversation around self-identification. Of course, we saw the case in Scotland of Isla Bryson, the male rapist, the biological man who became a woman to go into a woman's jail. A tactic, this report says, is becoming increasingly prevalent as a way of having a softer time in jail, but also opening up the ability for predatory biological men to go into women's safe spaces. And a lot of people campaign this is a law that should be changed.
And I think Suella Braverman is trying to do that, and she has told police forces that this needs to stop, that they cannot just take this sort of self-identification.
Yeah.
But the slightly a missed point of all of this is also it makes the crime statistics next to useless. Because if you're looking at it as to what crimes are being committed against who and where do you need to put your resources, then the figures are going to be skewed. The data is then going to be useless.
And justice hasn't been served.
Yeah.
Absolutely, justice hasn't been served. And for all of those victims of rape, I think this is a real kick in the teeth to them, that their crimes are not taken seriously and people are going to get off, as you say, lightly.
Can I lift the mood, though, before we run out of time, about this amazing woman who's 104 years old and she has thrown herself out of an aeroplane, if you like. Claire, tell us about it.
This is a 104-year-old lady from Chicago, Dorothy Hoffner, and she has become the Guinness World Record holder for a tandem for a skydive. It was previously held by a 103-year-old.
Oh, my goodness.
But, I mean, when you look at the footage of this, I mean, this strapped to an instructor, this little old lady who had approached the aeroplane with a Zimmer frame, was helped up the steps, and then is just free-falling.
She's enjoying it.
I'm just enjoying every second of
For those
it.
who can't see it, she's smiling like a Cheshire cat.
And her grey hair is in the wind. I mean, and there they make a very, very good landing.
Very soft landing. I mean, for starters, I'd be terrified of doing anything like that. And secondly, at that age, I'd be concerned that you might cork it mid-air.
Well, and I wonder if her expert jumper with her was wondering about that.
I wouldn't have done that at 40, let alone at 104.
Oh, that's brilliant. We'll move on then, Nigel, to Boris Johnson and what he thinks of Rishi Sunak's balmy... Oh, no, sorry, that's what he thought of it.
That's what he thinks.
Of the smoking ban.
Yes,
the fact that you can, if you're one age, you can smoke yourself to death.
Yes.
But if you're born a day later, you're not allowed to smoke at all.
Exactly, yes. This was announced at the Tory party conference. So it's to increase the smoking age by 1 year every year until nobody can ever buy cigarettes. What Boris Johnson says is that this is completely balmy, shouldn't be telling people what to do. And it's true, it's very unconservative to go and do that, which is why it was interesting that Rishi Sunak did it, because the Conservatives are meant to believe in freedom of choice. However, as smoking is the biggest killer in this country, I do think it's probably a very sensible plan to actually introduce.
But there's also an argument, Claire, to make 10 billion quid per annum in tobacco tax. Smokers, in a way, pay as they go, if you're going to be brutal about it. And is it actually... I know that Rishi's very passionate about this topic. Is this like a legacy issue? Does he want to make his point? He thinks he might get the chop at the next election anyway, but he's making a stand. And Boris is rebelling against this. I think you've nailed it. It's not a very conservative thing to do, is it? To be a nanny state like this.
It isn't. And strangely, I now agree with Boris Johnson, which is very unusual ground for me to be on. And I think he's right. I mean, it is profoundly unconservative. It's also, how is it going to work in practice? Are you going to have the situation of a shopkeeper having to ID a 40-year-old and say, were you born on or before the 1st of January 2009, in which case you can't, and what's going to happen? Are the police going to go around and arrest a 41-year-old for buying a packet of cigarettes for a 40-year-old?
Well, you may not have to take it that far, but there's no doubt it will have an effect,
It will have an effect. And I think you're right to look at smoking, but I think that Rishi Sunak really needed to have addressed a slightly more complicated and larger, if you pardon the pun, problem, which is obesity for public health reasons. I think that is on the increase, whereas smoking in those age groups is actually on the decrease.
But, you know, I think obesity is much harder to fight than just stopping smoke.
It is, but then why shouldn't we put the money into looking at that and looking... It is a very complex area, but it would save so many more lives if we could work with those people.
Yeah, but they've tried everything, haven't they? They've tried putting different traffic lights on food. Nobody wants to know they still like the food they like, even though it's making them fat and unhealthy.
And there can't be a single smoker out there who doesn't know it's bad for them. I mean, everyone knows smoking is bad, but it's a choice. And should the Tory government be mandating against choice? Boris obviously thinks no, and so do you.
Yeah, I do. And I think for once he is absolutely spot on this.
And I'm with Rishi on this one.
I'm with Rishi on this one. I'm very delighted. I think, why not? Give it a go, because nobody wants their child to take up smoking, do they really? Nobody really wants it. OK, thanks very much indeed for the moment. We've run out of time yet again, but we do want to find out about the weather.